Whispers in the Hollow. Chapter 1. The House That Breathes. The road to Hollowmere ended without ceremony. One moment, Isla Gray was following a narrow strip of asphalt through skeletal trees, and the next, the pavement dissolved into gravel, then dirt, then something older packed earth scarred by time and neglect. Her headlights cut through the fog in pale, trembling cones, illuminating twisted roots and leaning fence posts like broken ribs. She slowed the car. The forest pressed closer here, branches clawing at the edges of the road as though trying to pull her back or keep her out. Isla wasn't sure which thought unsettled her more. When the house finally emerged, it did not announce itself. It simply appeared a dark mass rising from the fog, its silhouette jagged against the low-hanging sky. Hollowmere House. Not abandoned. Not alive. Something in between. Isla stopped the car at the iron gate. It stood open, hinges rusted, chains hanging loose as if someone had given up on locking it long ago. She cut the engine, and the sudden silence rang in her ears. No birds, no insects, just the faint whisper of wind threading through the trees. She rested her forehead briefly against the steering wheel. This was a mistake, a quiet voice inside her said. She ignored it. Isla stepped out, boots crunching on gravel that sounded far too loud in the stillness. The air smelled damp, metallic, tinged with rot like rain soaked into old wood. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, though the chill she felt had nothing to do with temperature. The house watched her. That was the first thought that lodged itself into her mind, unwelcome and persistent. The windows were dark, but not empty. Tall, narrow panes stared down at her like unblinking eyes, their glass warped with age. The structure leaned slightly, as if listening. "Get a grip," she murmured. She had chosen this place deliberately. Isolation, silence, somewhere her past couldn't follow her, somewhere the memories would finally lose their grip. She dragged her suitcase through the gate and up the cracked stone path. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the ground resisted her presence. The front door loomed ahead, oak, scarred, carved with symbols worn smooth by time and touch. Isla hesitative. Her fingers hovered inches from the handle. That was when she felt it. A pressure, subtle but unmistakable, like a breath against the back of her neck. She spun around. Nothing. The road lay empty behind her, swallowed by fog. The forest stood motionless, too still, as if holding its breath. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. "You're alone," she whispered, more command than reassurance. The handle was cold when she grasped it. The door opened with a long, reluctant groan, exhaling a scent of dust, mildew, and something faintly sweet beneath it, old perfume, perhaps, or decay disguised as memory. Inside, the house was dim but not dark. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, striping the floor in pale silver. Furniture lay shrouded in sheets, frozen mid-century, as if its occupants had simply stood up and never returned. The door shut behind her. Isla flinched, heart racing, and turned sharply. The latch clicked into place on its own. She swallowed. "Draft," she said aloud. Her voice sounded wrong here, too loud, too alive. She rolled her suitcase forward. The wheels caught on uneven boards, and the sound echoed upward, disappearing into unseen levels. The ceiling rose high above her, a cathedral of shadow and cobwebs. A grand staircase curved upward, its banister polished smooth by countless hands. As Isla stepped fully into the foyer, a strange sensation settled over her skin. Awareness. Not hers. The house noticed her. She felt it the way one feels a stare, prickling heat, crawling anticipation. Her pulse quickened, not entirely from fear. Something else stirred beneath it, a tension she didn't want to examine too closely. She shook her head and moved deeper inside. The living room lay to the left. A fireplace dominated one wall, its stone blackened by decades of soot. Above it hung a mirror, tall and oval, its surface clouded. Isla paused before it, studying her reflection. She looked thinner than she remembered. Hollowed, dark circles bruised the skin beneath her eyes. The kind of face that belonged to someone running from something rather than toward anything. Perfect, she muttered. As if in response, the mirror shivered. Just slightly. Isla's breath hitched. She leaned closer, squinting. The glass was still, dusty, unmoving. Her reflection stared back, pale and uncertain. Then she noticed something that made her stomach drop. For half a second, just a flicker, she hadn't been alone in the reflection. Someone had been standing behind her. Her heart slammed violently. Isla spun around, breath tearing from her lungs. The room was empty. Silence pressed in again, thick and suffocating. She laughed shakily. Jet lag. Stress. That's all. She didn't believe it. Dragging her suitcase upstairs felt like ascending into a throat. The air grew colder with each step, carrying faint, indistinct sounds, creaks, sighs, a low hum that vibrated beneath the floorboards. The bedroom she chose sat at the end of the east wing, overlooking the forest. The bed was massive, draped in heavy curtains that stirred despite the lack of breeze. Isla dropped her bag and sat on the edge of the mattress, exhaustion finally claiming her. That was when the whisper came, so soft she almost missed it. Isla. Her name slid across her skin like a caress. She froze. I didn't tell anyone I was coming, she whispered. The silence that followed felt deliberate, expectant. Chapter 2. The Man at the Gate. Isla woke to the sound of iron screaming. It dragged her out of sleep like a hook through flesh-sharp, metallic, wrong. She sat up in bed, heart pounding, the echo of her dream still clinging to her skin. The room was gray with early morning light, fog pressing against the windows like a living thing. The brass key lay where she had left it, or where it had left itself. Isla stared at it for a long moment before swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet touched the floor, and a shiver ran through her, not from cold, but from the sensation that the house was awake now. Alert, curious. The sound came again, a long, dragging shriek followed by a dull clang. The gate. She crossed to the window. The forest beyond was swallowed by fog, but the drive was just visible, pale and winding. At the far end, near the iron gate, a figure stood. A man. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing that blended into the mist, his hands wrapped around the rusted bars. He pulled them open slowly, deliberately, as though he knew exactly how much noise the metal would make, as though he wanted her to hear. Isla's breath caught. No car, no sound of footsteps approaching the house, just him appearing as if summoned by the place itself. She watched as he stepped through the gate and stopped. Even from his distance, she felt his gaze lift, direct, and unflinching, finding the window where she stood. Her skin prickled. He shouldn't have been able to see her, and yet she was certain he could. Isla stepped back from the window, heart racing. Every instinct screamed at her to lock the door, to retreat into the house's depths and pretend she hadn't seen him. Instead, she grabbed her coat. "Idiot," she muttered, pulling it on. By the time she reached the front door, the house seemed to resist her. The air thickened, pressure building like a warning. The floor creaked beneath her feet, not settling sounds, but something more deliberate. A low groan rolled through the walls. "Don't go." The thought wasn't hers. Isla hesitated, hand on the handle. The brass key in her pocket pulsed with warmth, a strange comfort. She didn't understand why, but it steadied her. "I just want answers," she whispered. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. The fog curled around her ankles as she stepped onto the porch. The man stood halfway up the drive now, having crossed the distance without her noticing. Up close, he was unsettling in a way she couldn't quite define. Not because he looked dangerous, because he looked intent. His dark hair fell loosely around his face, his features sharp and composed, as though carved rather than born. His eyes gray, almost silver, studied her with a familiarity that made her pulse stutter. "You moved the gate," Isla said, her voice steadier than she felt. A faint smile touched his mouth. Not friendly, not cruel, observant. "It was already open," he replied. His voice was low, smooth, carrying easily through the fog. "I only finished what the house started." Her fingers curled reflexively. "You shouldn't be here." "No," he agreed calmly. "I shouldn't." That did nothing to ease the tension crawling under her skin. He took another step forward. Isla didn't retreat, though every nerve screamed at her to do so. Something else held her in place, curiosity sharpened to a dangerous edge. "Who are you?" she asked. He paused, gaze flicking briefly to the house behind her. The windows stared back, dark and watchful. "Someone who knows Hollowmere," he said. "Better than most." "That's not an answer. It's the only one that's safe." Her jaw tightened. "Safe for who?" "For you." "I know," he interrupted gently. "That's why I'm here." Anger flared, cutting through the unease. "If this is some kind of joke." "It isn't." His gaze darkened, intensity sharpening. "And you shouldn't be standing on that porch." A sudden creak sounded behind her. The front door shifted, wood groaning as though under strain. Isla didn't turn, but she felt it pressure, heat, a possessive awareness that tightened around her spine. The man noticed. His expression changed. Not fear, respect. "It's already noticed you," he said quietly. Her throat went dry. "What has?" The man hesitated, as if weighing how much truth she could survive. "This house doesn't like to be alone," he said, "and it doesn't like to share." A chill slid through her, deep and intimate. "Then why am I still here?" His eyes locked onto hers, something dark and unreadable stirring within them. "Because it chose you," he said, "and because you opened the door." Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. The fog thinned slightly, and for a moment Isla was acutely aware of her own body, her breath, her heartbeat, the way his attention seemed to trace her like a touch. "Your name," she said. He studied her for a long moment, then inclined his head slightly, a gesture that felt oddly formal. "Lucian Blackwell." The name settled into her bones like a memory she couldn't place. "And if I ask you to leave?" Isla asked. His mouth curved faintly. "You won't," he said. "Not yet. Before she could respond, the front door slammed shut behind her. The sound cracked through the fog like a gunshot. Isla spun around, heart pounding. The door was sealed tight, handle unmoving beneath her grasp. She was locked out. Lucien didn't move. He watched her with that same unreadable calm, as though this had been inevitable. "Looks like it's decided," he said softly. Isla turned back to him, pulse racing not just with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Anticipation. Chapter 3. The Room That Remembers. The house unlocked itself. The handle turned beneath Isla's grip with a soft, almost satisfied click, as if Hollowmere had merely been waiting long enough to make a point. The door creaked open, exhaling cold air that brushed past her ankles and curled outward into the fog. Lucien didn't move to follow her. Not immediately. Isla hesitated on the threshold, every instinct telling her that stepping back inside meant crossing something she wouldn't be able to uncross. She glanced over her shoulder. Lucien stood at the edge of the porch now, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint scar cutting through one dark eyebrow. His gaze flicked briefly to the door, then back to her. "It won't lock again," he said. "Not today." "How do you know?" she asked. "Because it's curious," he replied, "and curiosity makes it careless." That sent a shiver through her. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her, not slammed this time, but drawn shut with a slow, deliberate finality. The foyer felt different than it had the night before. Warmer, heavier, as though the house had inhaled and was holding the breath in its lungs. Lucien entered a moment later. The air shifted with his presence, pressure sliding across Isla's skin like an invisible hand. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. "You shouldn't wander alone," he said quietly. "I was fine before you showed up." A corner of his mouth lifted. "You found the key." Her fingers curled instinctively in her coat pocket. "You left it," she accused. Lucien's gaze dropped just briefly to the pocket. When his eyes lifted again, something like surprise flickered across his face. "No," he said, "I didn't." That unsettled her more than if he had admitted it. He gestured toward the hallway. "There's a room upstairs. East wing. Last door on the left." Her pulse quickened. "My bedroom." "Yes," he said, "but that's not the room I mean." She stared at him. "I'm not letting you wander around my house." His eyes darkened slightly. "It isn't your house." The words landed with quiet force. Before she could argue, the floor beneath her feet creaked one long, directional sound, as if guiding rather than settling. The air pulled subtly toward the staircase. Lucien tilted his head. "It wants to show you. That's not comforting. It isn't meant to be." Against her better judgment, Isla moved toward the stairs. Each step groaned beneath her weight, the wood warm under her boots. She felt watched not from one place, but from everywhere at once. Lucien followed a step behind, close enough that she could sense him without looking. His presence was grounding in a way she resented. The hallway at the top was longer than she remembered. The walls were lined with portraits' faces painted in dark oils, their eyes unervingly lifelike. Isla slowed, drawn unwillingly to them. They all looked familiar. Not identical, not exact, but echoes. Women with her bone structure, her mouth, her eyes, her stomach twisted. "Who are they?" she asked. Lucien stopped beside her. "Those who stayed." A chill slid down her spine. "Stayed how long?" "Too long." They reached the end of the hall. The last door stood slightly ajar, light leaking from the cracks, soft, golden, impossibly warm. Isla hadn't noticed it before. Lucien did not touch the door. He didn't need to. It opened on its own, revealing a room untouched by dust or decay. It was a bedroom, but not hers. The walls were paneled in dark wood, polished to a soft sheen. Heavy curtains framed tall windows that overlooked the forest, though the glass reflected more than it revealed. A four-poster bed dominated the space, its linens pristine, indented slightly as if someone had just risen from it. Isla stepped inside. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the room reacted. The air thickened. The light deepened. A low hum vibrated beneath her ribs, resonating with something inside her she didn't have words for. Her breath hitched. "This room remembers," Lucien said behind her. "It keeps what the rest of the house forgets." She turned slowly, pulse racing. "Remembers what?" "You." Her laugh came out sharp, brittle. "I've never been here." Lucien's gaze softened not with kindness, but with certainty. "Not like this." The door closed. Isla spun, heart slamming. She rushed to the handle, twisting it hard. It didn't move. "Open it," she said. Lucien didn't approach. "It won't." Panic flared hot and fast. "You said—" "I said it wouldn't lock again," he replied calmly. "I didn't say it would let you leave." The room shifted. Isla staggered as a wave of sensation washed over her. Heat, pressure, 1,000 whispering impressions layered over one another. The scent of old perfume filled the air, sweet and cloying. The light flickered. Images crashed into her mind. Hands brushing her hair. A voice murmuring her name, not quite her name, but close enough to sting. The feeling of being watched with hunger and devotion in equal measure. She gasped, clutching the bedpost to steady herself. "Stop it," she whispered. "Make it stop." Lucien finally moved. He came to stand in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Still, he did not touch her. "It's not doing this to hurt you," he said softly. "It's showing you what it wants." "And what's that?" she demanded, voice trembling. His eyes searched her face, something dark and conflicted churning beneath the surface. "To be remembered," he said, "and to be chosen." The whispers grew louder, curling around her thoughts, brushing the edges of her consciousness like teasing fingers. Isla's knees weakened, her body humming with an unwanted, terrifying awareness. "Why me?" she whispered. Lucien's jaw tightened. "Because you listen." The room pulsed once slow, deliberate. Then the door clicked open. The pressure vanished. Isla stumbled forward, breath ragged, heart racing. She turned back to Lucien, anger and fear tangling tightly in her chest. "You knew," she said. "You knew what would happen." "Yes, and you let it happen anyway." His expression didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened. "Because if it doesn't show you now," he said quietly, "it will take more later." Silence fell, heavy and intimate. Isla looked back at the room one last time. The bed was smooth again, the light dim, as if nothing had happened at all. But her body remembered. So did the house. And somewhere deep inside, she feared she did too. Chapter 4. The Rules of Hollowmere. The house did not like being challenged. Isla felt it the moment she stepped out of the remembering room. The hallway seemed narrower now, the shadows deeper, as though Hollowmere had folded itself inward. Portraits along the walls watched her openly, no longer pretending indifference. Lucian closed the door behind them. This time it stayed shut. "You should tell me everything," Isla said, her voice tight. "Right now." Lucian didn't argue. He leaned against the wall across from her, arms crossed loosely, posture deceptively relaxed. But his eyes never left her face. "There are rules," he said instead. "You need to understand them before you understand anything else." Isla laughed, sharp and humorless. "You mean before I lose my mind? Before the house decides you don't deserve one?" That wiped the humor from her face. He straightened and gestured down the corridor. "Walk with me. I'm not trusting you again." "You already are," he replied calmly. "You just don't want to admit it." The floor creaked, urging them forward. Isla swallowed and followed. They descended the staircase slowly. With each step, the air grew warmer, heavier, like descending into breath rather than space. Lucian spoke as they walked, his voice low, controlled. "Rule 1, he said. "The house listens." "To what?" Isla asked. "Everything," he replied. "Words, thoughts, desire, fear." His gaze slid to her briefly. "Especially fear." Her fingers curled into fists. She thought of the whisper saying her name, of the room that had known her body better than she did. And if it hears something it likes? Lucian exhaled slowly. "Then it answers." They reached the ground floor. The living room door stood open, the mirror above the fireplace gleaming faintly. Isla avoided looking at it. "Rule 2, Lucian continued. "Never sleep in the dark." "That's ridiculous." "No," he said quietly. "It's mercy." She scoffed, but unease twisted in her stomach. "Why?" "Because the house moves more freely when you can't see," he said, "and it prefers you unaware." The memory of waking drenched in sweat, the dream hands hovering just above her skin, made her shiver. They crossed into the dining room. The long table was set now, plates, silverware, candles half melted as though abandoned mid-meal. Isla stopped short. This wasn't like this before. Lucian didn't look surprised. "It's been lonely." "That's not an excuse." "No," he agreed. "It's a motive." He reached out and lifted one of the candles. The wax was warm. "Rule 3, he said. "Do not eat food the house provides." Isla stared at him. "You're joking." "I'm not." "Why?" His jaw tightened. "Because Hollowmere remembers everyone it feeds." Her stomach turned. She took a step back, heart racing. "You said rules." "That's only 3. Lucian set the candle down carefully. "Rule 4, he said. "Never promise it anything." The words carried weight. "Warning." "Not even jokingly?" Isla asked. "Especially not jokingly." The mirror behind them cracked softly. They both turned. A thin fracture ran through the glass, splitting Isla's reflection down the middle. On one side, she stood as she was tired, wary, human. On the other, her reflection smiled. Not her smile. Isla's breath caught painfully. Lucian moved instantly, stepping between her and the mirror, his back to the glass. "Don't look," he said firmly. The smile faded. The crack sealed itself. Silence rushed back in, thick and oppressive. "Isla exhalet shakili." "You missed one." Lucian glanced at her. "Did I?" "Yes," she said. "The rule about you." Something unreadable crossed his face. "There is no rule about me." "That's a lie." The house creaked low and slow, as if amused. Lucian looked away, jaw clenched. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, honest in a way that made her pulse stutter. Then listen carefully, he said. Rule 5 is the one that matters most. He met her gaze. Do not fall in love inside Hollowmere. The room seemed to tilt. Isla let out a breathless laugh. You think that's a risk? I know it is. The candles flickered violently, flames bending toward them. Heat pooled in the air, thick with tension and something dangerously close to intimacy. And what happens if someone breaks that rule? Isla asked softly. Lucien's eyes darkened, silver catching the firelight. Then the house doesn't let them leave, he said. Not fully. A long pause stretched between them. Isla became acutely aware of how close they stood, of the way his presence grounded her even as it threatened to pull her deeper, of how the house seemed to lean in listening. You didn't tell me why you're really here, she said. Lucien hesitated. Then, quietly, because I already broke that rule once. The lights went out. Every candle extinguished at once. Darkness flooded the room, thick, alive, pressing close. And in that darkness, something breathed, right between them. Chapter 5. The first night after the rules. The darkness did not feel empty. It pressed against Isla's skin, thick and intimate, as if the house had leaned in close to listen for her breathing. She stood frozen, heart pounding, every sense sharpened to a painful edge. Lucien was still in front of her. She couldn't see him, but she felt him, his presence, a steady weight in the dark, anchoring her as the air shifted and settled. Somewhere in the house, wood creaked slowly, deliberately. Not the random sounds of an old structure, but movement, purpose. Don't move, Lucien said quietly. His voice cut through the darkness like a hand reaching out. Isla obeyed without thinking, her body responding before her mind caught up. What's happening? She whispered. The house is deciding how much it can take tonight. That did not help. A soft sound drifted through the room, fabric brushing fabric, footsteps without feet. Isla's breath came shallow, her pulse loud in her ears. She fought the urge to reach for Lucien, to close the space between them and anchor herself to something undeniably real. Rule 5 echoed in her mind. Do not fall in love inside Hollowmere. The lights returned without warning. Candles flared back to life all at once, their flames unnaturally steady. The dining room snapped back into focus, perfectly ordinary if one ignored the claw marks now etched faintly into the wooden table. Isla stared. They weren't there before, she said. Lucien followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. No, they weren't. The house had marked the moment. Lucien stepped back, increasing the distance between them, deliberate and controlled. Isla felt the loss immediately like a sudden drop in temperature. You should go upstairs, he said. Sleep. I don't think I can. You need to try. And you? She asked. I won't be sleeping. That sent a strange, unwanted pang through her chest. Because of the rules? Because it doesn't bother me the way it bothers you, he replied. Then, after a pause, and because I don't dream anymore, they stood in silence, the unspoken heavy between them. Finally, Isla turned away. Her bedroom felt smaller than it had before, as though the walls had inched closer during her absence. She locked the door, then unlocked it again, remembering how little that gesture mattered here. She left the lamp on. The brass key sat on the nightstand, catching the light. Isla picked it up, turning it over in her fingers. It was warmer now than it had been before, almost pulsing. I won't promise you anything, she murmured, unsure who she was speaking to. But you don't own me. The key warmed further. She set it down quickly and climbed into bed, pulling the covers tight around her. Sleep crept in slowly, reluctantly, as if even her exhaustion was wary of what waited on the other side. When she dreamed awake. The room did not fade. Instead, it sharpened. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the floor like fingers. The curtains stirred though the air was still. Isla lay frozen, heart racing, aware of every inch of her body. Something shifted at the foot of the bed. Not weight, presence. She couldn't move. Her limbs felt pinned, not by force, but by expectation, as if the house knew she would stay still. A whisper brushed her ear. "You listen today." Her breath stuttered. "I didn't answer," she whispered back. A pause. "Then you will." The mattress dipped slightly, just enough to suggest someone sitting beside her. Isla squeezed her eyes shut, pulse roaring. She focused on the lamp's glow, on the solid reality of the bed beneath her. Another whisper, closer now. "He cannot stay forever." Her chest tightened painfully. "Neither can I," she said. The presence shifted, amusement curling through the air. "You already have." The pressure lifted abruptly. Isla gasped, air rushing back into her lungs as sensation returned to her limbs. She bolted upright, heart hammering, the room utterly still. The lamp flickered, then steadied. Morning light crept in through the window hours later, pale and fragile. Isla woke stiff and exhausted, her body humming with leftover tension. For a moment, she almost believed the night had been a dream. Then she noticed a mark on her wrist. Not a bruise, not a cut, a faint imprint, like fingers pressed too gently to leave pain, but not gently enough to be forgotten. She covered it instinctively. Downstairs, she found Lucien in the kitchen. He stood at the counter, hands braced against the wood, head bowed slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. He looked up when she entered. Their eyes met. He didn't ask how she slept. He didn't need to. "It spoke to you," he said quietly. Isla nodded once. Lucien exhaled slowly, something dark and resigned passing over his features. "Then the rules are already bending," he said. "And Hollowmere never bends without expecting something in return." Outside, the house creaked low, satisfied. Listening. Chapter 6. What the House Takes. The house was quieter after the first night. Not peaceful, watchful. Isla felt it in the way the air clung to her skin as she moved through the halls, in the way the floorboards softened their creaks beneath her feet, as if Hollowmere were learning her weight. Learning her. She stood at the kitchen sink, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass of the window. The mark on her wrist throbbed faintly, hidden beneath her sleeve, warm in a way skin should not be. Lucien watched her from across the room. "You shouldn't hide it," he said. She didn't look at him. "I'm not ready to see it again." That's how it starts. That made her turn. "What does?" she demanded. Lucien hesitated. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken history. Finally, he straightened and walked past her, stopping just close enough that she could feel his presence without being overwhelmed by it. "The house doesn't take things all at once," he said quietly. "It starts small, subtle, something you barely notice giving up." Isla folded her arms. Like sleep, like certainty, the word landed harder than she expected. Lucien reached for the kettle, though neither of them drank the water here. It was habit, something human to anchor himself. People think Hollowmere feeds on fear, he continued, that it wants screams, madness, death. He shook his head once. That's just what's left behind. Then what does it want? Isla asked. Lucien met her gaze. Attachment, he said. It takes what you cling to most and convinces you it was your choice. A chill crept down her spine. She thought of the whisper in the dark. You already have. Isla swallowed. Tell me about the first one. Lucien's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might refuse. Instead, he turned toward the window. There was a woman, he said. Her name was Eliza. The house creaked softly like a breath drawn in. She laughed too loudly. Lucien continued. She touched things like she was afraid they might disappear if she didn't. She loved this place for the wrong reasons. Isla's chest tightened. You loved her? Yes. The admission came without hesitation and without warmth. Just truth. She said the house made her feel seen, he said. Said it understood her better than people ever had. Isla closed her eyes briefly. What did it take from her? She asked. Lucien's voice lowered. Her edges. Isla froneth. Her what? Her anger. Her doubts. Her fear. His fingers curled slightly at his side. Everything that made her question staying. The realization hit Isla slowly and then all at once. It didn't trap her, she whispered. It convinced her she belonged. Lucia nodded. And you? Isla asked. What did it take from you? His eyes darkened. My urgency. The house shifted. I used to fight it, he said. Argue with it. Try to leave. Try to save people. His mouth curved into something bitter. Now I move carefully. Speak carefully. Love carefully. The word love lingered between them, heavy and dangerous. That's what it took, Isla said softly. Your need to escape. Yes. She looked down at her wrist. And what has it taken from me? She asked. Lucien didn't answer right away. The silence stretched long enough that her pulse began to race. Finally, he said, your sense of before. Her breath caught. You're starting to measure time by what happens here, he continued. By nights instead of years. By rules instead of memories. Isla felt suddenly dizzy. She hadn't thought about her old apartment since arriving. Hadn't checked her phone. Hadn't wondered how long she planned to stay. The house creaked again. Satisfied. I won't let it, she said, more to herself than to him. Lucien stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the tension in his shoulders, the restraint written into every line of him. That's the dangerous part, he said quietly. It doesn't need your permission. The air thickened suddenly, pressure sliding between them like a third presence. Isla's breath came shallow as she became acutely aware of the space between their bodies of how much she wanted to close it. The house noticed. A sharp knock echoed through the kitchen. They both froze. The sound came again, 3 slow knocks, precise and deliberate, from inside the walls. Lucien swore under his breath. It's early, he muttered. That's not supposed to happen yet. Isla's pulse raced. What's not supposed to happen? The knocking moved, traveling along the wall, then up, then across the ceiling. Following something. Following her. Lucien grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. The contact sent a shock through her system, heat blooming where he touched her, grounding and dangerous all at once. Don't answer it, he said, no matter what it says. The knocking stopped. Silence fell. Then a voice spoke not from the walls, but from inside Isla's head. What would you give to leave? Her breath hitched. Lucien's grip tightened slightly. Isla. She swallowed hard. It's asking me something. I know. The house waited, listening, hungry, and Isla realized with a slow, sinking dread Hollowmere wasn't taking from her yet. It was negotiating. Chapter 7. The Bargain. The house did not repeat the question. It didn't need to. The silence that followed pressed against Isla's skull, thick and intimate, like lips hovering just shy of skin. Lucien's hand was still wrapped around her wrist, steady, grounding, the only thing keeping her tethered to herself. What would you give to leave? The words echoed anyway, vibrating through her bones. I'm not answering it, Isla said, though her voice shook. Lucien's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the wall, as if he could stare the house into submission. Good. Don't even think about. I didn't say I was answering, she cut in. I said I'm not answering yet. He turned to her sharply. Isla. She met his gaze, pulse racing. You told me it negotiates. That it doesn't take until it convinces you it was your choice. Yes. Then pretending it isn't speaking won't make it stop. The air shifted. Not angry. Interested. Lucien released her wrist slowly, as though afraid sudden movement might provoke something worse. Listening is dangerous. So is ignorance. The house creaked one low, deliberate sound approval or warning, she couldn't tell. Isla took a breath and spoke into the silence. What do you want? The temperature dropped instantly. Lucien swore softly. The lights dimmed, shadows stretching long and thin across the kitchen floor. The knocking returned, not violent, not loud, but rhythmic, patient, like a heartbeat. Then the voice answered, what you already carry. Isla's throat tightened. That's not an answer. It is the voice replied smoothly. You just don't know its value yet. Lucien stepped closer again, not touching her this time, but near enough that she could feel his presence like heat against her side. It's baiting you, he said quietly. It always starts vague. The clearer it gets, the more you lose. Isla clenched her fists. Then tell me how this ends. Lucien's eyes darkened. It doesn't. Not cleanly. The house seemed to sigh. You want to leave, it murmured. You want certainty. You want the ache to stop. Isla's breath stuttered. It knew. Images flickered at the edge of her thoughts, her old life, fractured and unfinished. The grief she'd packed away so tightly she'd almost forgotten its shape. The exhaustion of carrying it alone. Lucien watched her face closely. Too closely. You're already offering it something, he said softly. Don't. She swallowed. What did you offer? Lucien flinched. The house waited. Finally, he spoke. I offered it my future. Isla stared at him. That's not possible. It is here, he said. I told I would stay. That I would stop trying to leave. Stop trying to change it. Her chest tightened painfully. And did it let her go? Lucien didn't answer. The silence was confirmation enough. Isla closed her eyes. What happens if I refuse? She asked the house. The reply was immediate. Then you stay unfinished. A shiver ran through her. And if I agree? The pressure deepened, curling warmly around her spine. Then you trade one ache for another. Lucien grabbed her arm again, this time without restraint. Isla, listen to me. Whatever it asks, the price will grow. It always does. She looked at him, really looked, at the restraint etched into him, at the quiet sorrow beneath his control, at the way the house leaned toward them both, listening like a lover. You're still paying, she said softly. Yes. And you think I won't? I think, he said hoarsely, that I can survive it. I don't know if you can. The house creaked sharply, displeased. Isla pulled her arm free and stepped forward. I won't give you my future, she said aloud, and I won't give you my love. Lucian's breath caught. The house stilled. But I'll give you this, Isla continued, voice steady despite the fear thrumming through her veins. I'll stay for now. I'll listen. I'll learn. I won't fight you blindly. The pressure shifted, testing, tasting. And in return, she said, you stopped touching me without permission. Silence fell, so completely it rang. Lucian stared at her, shock flickering across his face. The house considered. Time stretched. The air grew warm again, heavy with anticipation. Then, agreed, the voice murmured. For now. The lights flared back to full brightness. The knocking ceased. The walls relaxed. Lucian let out a slow, unsteady breath. You shouldn't have done that. Isla's legs trembled, but she stayed standing. I didn't promise anything. No, he said. You did something worse. She looked at him. What? You set terms, he said quietly. It likes that. A chill slid down her spine. And Lucian? She asked. Yes. If I just made a bargain, she said, what did it take? Lucian hesitated, eyes flicking briefly to her chest. Then he answered. Your distance, he said, from me. The realization hit her all at once. The house creaked softly, satisfied, because now, whether she wanted it or not, she was no longer standing outside the danger. She was standing with him. Chapter 8. The thing that watches when you touch. Isla felt it before anything happened. A shift, a tightening of the air, like the house had leaned closer, not to listen, but to watch. Lucian noticed too. His posture changed, shoulders drawing back slightly, as though bracing against something unseen. The calm he usually wore like armor cracked just enough for her to glimpse the tension beneath. We shouldn't stay here, he said quietly. You always say that after something happens, Isla replied. This time, he said, it's different. They moved through the hallway together, neither leading, neither following. The house seemed to part for them, doors slightly ajar, shadows retreating just enough to allow passage. It was cooperative now. That was worse. They stopped near the base of the staircase. Isla's breath felt shallow, her skin too aware of everything. The scrape of fabric when Lucian shifted beside her, the warmth radiating from him, the way the space between them felt charged, alive. She broke first. You said it doesn't like to share, she said. Lucian's jaw tightened. No, it doesn't. And now, he said slowly, it's trying to decide what you are to each other. The words settled heavily between them. Isla laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. We're nothing. The house creaked. Once. Sharp. Lucian exhaled. Lying is also something it notices. Silence pressed in again. The air grew warm, almost humid, like a storm gathering without clouds. Isla rubbed her arms, suddenly chilled despite the heat. You've been careful not to touch me. Lucian's eyes flicked to her hands, then back to her face. Yes, because of the rules? Because of what happens after? She hesitated, then asked the question that had been circling her thoughts since the bargain. What happens? Lucian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to pull away. His fingers stopped inches from her wrist. The house went utterly still. Isla's heart thundered. Every instinct screamed at her to move, to break the moment before something terrible took notice. She didn't. Lucien's fingers closed gently around her wrist. The reaction was immediate. The wall shifted, not visibly, but perceptibly, like a pressure change deep underground. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through Isla's bones. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Lucien sucked in a breath through his teeth. "There," he said quietly. "That. Isla swallowed." Her skin burned where he touched her, not painfully, but intensely, awareness spiking in a way that made her knees weak. "It's watching," she whispered. "Yes." The house creaked again, slow and indulgent. Isla felt it then, not a presence in the room, but around them, like a gaze without eyes, attention without form, something vast and patient, curling closer the longer Lucien didn't let go. "What does it want?" she asked. Lucien's thumb shifted slightly against her pulse. "To learn," he said. "What makes you react? What makes you stay?" The hum deepened. Isla's breath caught as the pressure coiled tighter around them. The house wasn't angry. It wasn't aggressive. It was curious, hungry in a quiet, intimate way. "Lucien," she said softly, "if we keep doing this, I know, and if we stop." His grip loosened but didn't release. "Then it will remember the difference." The thought sent a shiver through her. The house sighed. Warmth flooded the space suddenly, almost comforting. Isla felt it slide along her spine, down her arms, settling into her chest. Not touching, but close enough to suggest it could. A whisper brushed her thoughts. "Closer." Lucien stiffened. "No." The word was sharp, final. The warmth recoiled slightly, but didn't leave. Isla looked up at him, startled. "It listens to you." "Yes," he said grimly, "because I let it learn my voice." Another mistake he'd paid for. His fingers finally released her wrist. The hum faded. The pressure lifted. The house retreated not far, but enough to let them breathe again. Isla swayed slightly, unsteady. Lucien caught her reflexively. The instant his arms closed around her, the house reacted. Not violently, ecstatically. The walls creaked low and long, like a satisfied exhale. Heat surged through the air, and Isla gasped as sensation spiked everywhere at once: skin, breath, pulse, her body lighting up as though tuned to the house's frequency. Lucien froze. "Damn it," he muttered. Isla's hands were pressed against his chest now. Fingers curled into his shirt. She could feel his heart racing beneath her palms. Fast and controlled and very, very real. "Lucien," she whispered. I know," he said hoarsely. "Don't move." Too late. The house leaned in. Yes, it whispered. That. The pressure swelled, wrapping around them like invisible arms. Isla felt it trace the shape of them together, cataloging, memorizing, claiming the moment. Lucien pulled back abruptly, breaking the contact. The reaction was immediate and violent. A sharp crack echoed through the hall as a picture frame shattered against the far wall. The temperature dropped suddenly, the warmth snapping into cold. The house creaked angry now. Lucien stepped between Isla and the wall instinctively. "That," he said tightly, "is why we don't touch." Isla's breath came fast, her body still humming with leftover sensation. It felt like being wanted, he finished quietly, by something that never lets go. Silence fell again. Thick, tense. Isla looked at him. Fear and something dangerously close to longing tangled in her chest. "So now what?" she asked. Lucien met her gaze. Now, he said, it knows exactly what to take next. Somewhere deep in the house, something shifted, preparing. Chapter 9. The Cost of Being Seen. The house remembered everything. Not just the sound of her footsteps, not just the faint rhythm of her heartbeat, but the way she breathed, the subtle tension in her fingers, the flutter of nerve she tried to hide. It cataloged it all, slowly, like a predator savoring its meal. Isla had thought she could outweed it. She had thought she could move through Hollowmere as if it were a museum, untouchable, unseen. But the bargain had changed that. The house knew now. It knew her, and it knew him. Lucian stayed unusually quiet that morning. He didn't offer the habitual soft reassurances. He didn't distract her with words. Instead, he trailed behind her as she explored the house, his presence like a tether, yet heavy enough to remind her of what she was already losing. "They're gone," she murmured suddenly, noticing the absence of her old habits, the stack of books she had brought, her small trinkets from the city. "My things are gone." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Not gone. Borrowed. By whom?" "The house." Her stomach twisted. "What?" "Because you were too comfortable," he said softly. "It doesn't like comfort. Not from those it watches closely." Isla swallowed. She had felt it, the subtle rearrangement of furniture, the whisper of movement in rooms she hadn't entered. The house didn't just watch. It manipulated. It shaped her world. "And if I fight?" she asked. Lucian shook his head. "You can't. Not yet." Her pulse quickened. "Then what am I supposed to do?" He met her gaze, eyes hard. "Learn. Adapt. Be careful what you reveal. Because once it sees you fully, it takes more than objects." The words sank in. She understood then that the cost of being seen wasn't just physical, it was hers. Later that day, Isla found herself standing in the grand mirror-lined hallway, staring at her reflection. Her eyes seemed unfamiliar. Hollowmere had changed them, not drastically but subtly. Shadows lingered under her cheekbones, her lips looked tighter, the color in her face muted in ways she didn't recognize. She looked over her shoulder. Nothing. The house waited. A whisper, soft and intimate, brushed her thoughts. "You are observed." Isla's breath caught. She spun. Empty hallway. Lucian stepped into the corridor behind her, silent. "It sees more than we do," he said. "It records you, weighs you, decides what you're worth." "Worth?" she echoed. He nodded. "Everything comes with a price. And the closer you get to someone here," he paused, his gaze sharp, "the more the house decides to claim." Her stomach churned. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and for the first time, she realized the bargain she had struck was fragile. The house was patient, calculating, and it knew exactly what to take next. Not her life, not yet, but her attachment, her trust, herself. The afternoon stretched on, heavy and silent. When she tried to leave the house, the gates wouldn't budge. The fog pressed thicker against the edges of the driveway, curling like fingers that wanted to drag her back. Lucian caught her arm again. "Stay," he whispered. "It won't let you leave." "But why?" Isla demanded, fear and frustration rising in equal measure. "I haven't done anything." "You're seen," he said. "That's all it takes. Once it sees someone fully, Hollowmere tests them, decides if they can handle being known. If not, his eyes flick to the house, sharp. It will take something to make sure they stay." Isla's chest tightened. She understood with sudden clarity that her body, her mind, her emotions, everything was now currency. Every choice she made, every glance she spared, every thought she whispered aloud was being tallied. The shadows in the hall stretched toward her, and she could almost feel them touch the small swell of fear and desire within her. Lucien's voice broke through the tension. "We need to move. Follow me." As they walked through the winding corridors, Isla couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching their closeness, measuring the unspoken tension between them, cataloging every heartbeat. And in that quiet, oppressive surveillance, she realized something terrifying. Hollowmere didn't just want obedience. It wanted her submission. Not to leave, not to obey, but to give itself fully, even against her will. And she wasn't sure she could resist. Chapter 10. The Edge of Surrender. Night fell quickly. Hollowmere thrummed with quiet anticipation. Every shadow stretched long and deliberate. The house had waited all day for this moment, the moment when Isla would feel the pull of its attention fully, when the bargain would be tested, and the cost of being seen made impossible to ignore. Isla stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking down into the hall. Candlelight flickered against the polished wood, shadows twisting like serpents along the walls. Her pulse was loud in her ears, each beat echoing in the heavy silence. Lucien emerged from the hall below, eyes dark, expression unreadable. He held nothing in his hands. There was no plan he could offer her now, only presence. And presence was enough to make the air between them electric, dangerous, and intimate. "You feel it," he said quietly, not moving closer. "The house. It's aware." "Yes," Isla whispered. Her hands clutched the railing, knuckles white. "And it's waiting for me to make a mistake." "It's not just waiting," he corrected. "It's tempting." Her breath caught. She had felt the pull all day, subtle but insistent like gravity. Every time she moved, she felt it leaning closer, urging her to surrender, to trust him, to blur the lines between fear and desire. She glanced at him, heart hammering. "And if I do?" Lucien's gaze sharpened, his jaw tightening. "Then you will see how easily you can claim what you won't freely give." The temperature in the hall shifted. Shadows thickened, curling toward them. The candle flames flickered violently, yet the light revealed nothing new, only intensified the tension, made the air heavier, more charged. Isla's hand trembled on the railing. She felt the pull of the house, the subtle tug at her mind, at her instincts, at the part of her that wanted to yield, to feel seen, to be claimed. Lucien's voice broke through her thoughts. "Don't let it guide your choice. You decide." But even as he said it, his presence reminded her that she wasn't alone. His nearness, steady and human, contrasted with the house's overwhelming awareness, yet it didn't lessen the pull, it sharpened it. The walls seemed to breathe, slowly tightening around her, leaning in. A whisper, not loud but undeniable, caressed her thoughts. "You want it. You know you do." Isla's knees weakened. Her breath hitched. Every rational thought screamed to flee, to break the rules, to reject the invisible force that pressed so intimately against her mind and body. Lucien stepped forward, just enough to be near, not touching, yet the heat of his presence hit her like fire. "Don't answer it," he warned. "Not yet." Her eyes fluttered shut. The house's pull coiled tighter, winding around her senses. Images flashed at the edge of her mind. Herself, alone, herself with Lucien. The whisper of the past, memories of longing she had tried to bury. It was seductive, terrifying, and impossibly real. A soft creak came from a hall, behind her a door opening somewhere. The shadows shifted again, stretching longer, closer. Hollowmere was patient, testing, learning. It did not push, it did not threaten. It simply waited for her choice. Her pulse raced. She wanted to fight. She wanted to flee. She wanted to deny the sensation of being so acutely seen. But her body betrayed her. Her chest heaved. Her skin tingled. Her mind whispered truths she didn't want to admit. Lucien's hand hovered, near hers not touching, just close enough that she could feel the unspoken connection. "It's all right," he said softly. "You decide. You're in control. Don't forget that." Her eyes snapped open. She looked at him, really looked at the restraint in his gaze, at the intensity simmering in the line of his jaw, at the quiet danger that radiated from every inch of him. And she understood the depth of the choice before her. Surrender to the house, surrender to him, or walk away and know she might never walk away again. The whisper returned, closer now, intimate, curling around her thoughts. Closer. Let go. Isla's fingers brushed the railing, and the world seemed to tilt. She felt the weight of every rule she had been told, every bargain she had struck, every glance, every heartbeat cataloged. She could feel the house observing, measuring, learning. Lucien's voice broke the spell. "You can do this," he said. "Not for me. Not for it. For yourself." Her breath trembled. She closed her eyes again. The pull was irresistible, a force she could neither fight nor fully control. But in the stillness, she found clarity. Surrender did not mean defeat. Surrender meant choice. When she opened her eyes, the house had receded slightly, curious but patient, its awareness still pressing lightly, like a shadow brushing against her skin. Lucien remained close, steady, grounded. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I see you. Both of you. I choose carefully." The tension dissolved, not fully but enough. The house settled, leaning back, waiting, satisfied for now. Lucien exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from him, and Isla realized the edge of surrender was not about losing herself. It was about knowing exactly what she was giving, and exactly what she would never give. The house hummed softly, a low, satisfied purr, and for the first time, Isla felt she had survived Hollowmere's gaze without losing herself. But she also knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 11. Shadows Between Them. The house had shifted overnight. Isla noticed at the moment she woke. Hallways that had been familiar now seemed longer, darker. Shadows pooled differently, moving subtly as if repositioned while she slept. She pressed her hand to the wall, seeking the solidity of wood, and felt the faint hum beneath her fingers, the house breathing, watching, calculating. Lucien was already awake. He sat at the edge of the grand staircase, head bowed, fingers steepled together. He didn't look up when she entered the hallway. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "I don't sleep well here," he admitted, voice low. "Not when the house leans this close." Isla swallowed. She had felt it too, the lingering awareness of the last night, the imprint of the house's attention, and the way it had cataloged her choices, her hesitations, even her restraint. "It remembers," she said quietly. "Every touch, every glance." Lucien finally looked up, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Or maybe it was regret. More than that, he said. It remembers people. Everyone who has ever been claimed or almost claimed. Their mistakes, their bargains, their losses. Her chest tightened. Losses? He nodded. And not just theirs. Mine too. The words hung between them like smoke. Tell me, she whispered. Tell me about yours. Lucian exhaled slowly, gaze dropping. He ran a hand through his dark hair, disheveled in the way he usually hid from the house's scrutiny. It wasn't always this way. Not when I arrived. Hollowmere teaches patience, manipulation, and finally, surrender. I thought I could master it. I thought I could leave. I was wrong. He paused, voice tightening. I lost someone because of it. Someone I thought I could protect. Isla's stomach churned. Who? Eliza, he said softly, eyes distant. She stayed too long. She believed she could control it. I believed I could save her. The house had took the truth from her, piece by piece. And then it took her entirely. Isla swallowed hard, the shadows in the hallway pressing closer. You mean she's gone? Lucian's jaw tightened. Yes, and I never forgave myself. I promised I would never let it happen again. I've tried to keep people at a distance. I failed once. I will not fail again. The weight of his confession pressed against her chest, suffocating and intimate all at once. She realized with a jolt that his restraint, the careful space he maintained, the unspoken rules he lived by was built on guilt, on fear. And yet, she said quietly, here I am, close enough to be claimed. Lucian flinched, but only slightly. You're not her, he said firmly. I won't let that happen. The house creaked low, almost in laughter. Shadows curled along the walls as if responding, teasing. It had been listening. Always. Isla felt her pulse spike. It knows, she whispered. Yes, Lucian admitted. It knows everything. Every hesitation. Every heartbeat. Every secret you try to hide. Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Isla realized she was standing closer to him than she had intended. The warmth radiating from him seemed to fill the hallway, blending with the house's own attention until she could barely tell where one ended and the other began. The shadows, she said, voice trembling, they're moving differently. Watching us now. Lucian's gaze darkened. Not just watching, measuring, learning what it can take if you falter. And he looked away, jaw tight. I can't always protect you from it. Her throat constricted. She wanted to step back, but something fear, desire, kept her rooted. Then why am I still here? Because you choose to be, he said quietly, voice rough. Unlike the others, you're learning to negotiate. But the house, it doesn't forgive curiosity nor hesitation. It waits for weakness. Shadows always come for those who doubt themselves. The air thickened. Shadows lengthened, curling along the floor, climbing the walls. The house was close now, more attentive than ever, as though the intimacy between them had summoned it fully. Isla's pulse hammered in her ears. She felt the cost of being seen, of being measured. The house had cataloged her, Lucian, their closeness, their unspoken tensions. And if I falter, she asked, voice barely audible. Lucian's hand hovered near hers, not touching, but close enough to make her breath hitch. Then it takes, he said softly. Not everything, not yet, but enough that you'll feel the absence forever. Her stomach churned. Fear and desire coiled together, inseparable. She realized that in Hollowmere there was no escape from being observed, no refuge. only negotiation, only careful, deliberate choices. And the house, patient and hungry, was watching the shadows between them. Chapter 12. The house remembered everything. Isla awoke to silence. Not the quiet of an empty house, but the silence of being watched. Every creak, every groan, every whisper of wine through the eaves had been swallowed. Holomir held its breath. Lucian was already in the hall, leaning against the polished banister, eyes closed, listening. "It remembers everything," he said without turning. Isla swallowed hard. Everything. He opened his eyes. They were sharp, wary, haunted. Every person who's ever walked these halls. Every glance. Every heartbeat. Every bargain struck. Every secret offered, and every one refused. It catalogs them, judges them, learns from them. Her pulse tightened. And us. He nodded slowly. Especially us. The weight of the house pressed down, thicker than ever. Isla could feel it wrapping around her senses, brushing against her mind like a whisper she couldn't ignore. Lucian stepped closer. The house doesn't just remember what you do. It remembers who you are. She looked down at her hands. And what it wants. It takes what it sees as yours to give, he said quietly. Your attention, your trust, your fear. And when you give willingly, it records it as consent. Isla Siberith. And if I don't, then it tests you, Lucian said. Softly at first, then harder, until it knows whether you'll break or bend. The walls creaked, almost in agreement. Shadows flickered, responding to the tension that radiated from them. The house leaned closer. It remembers me too, Lucian continued, voice low. Not just the house, not just you. Me. And it isn't gentle about it. Isla's stomach twisted. What happened? He exhaled slowly, gaze dropping. I thought I could outsmart it. I thought I could leave. I brought people here, and I failed every single time. Holomir doesn't forget. Every mistake, every lapse, every moment of weakness, it keeps them. And eventually it shows you exactly what those failures cost. Her fingers tightened on the railing. You mean Eliza? He nodded, jaw tight. She believed she could leave. I believed I could protect her. The house had made her see every choice she had made as wrong. It took pieces of her slowly until she disappeared. The silence that followed was suffocating. And now, Isla Guisperth. Now, he said, voice rough, I carry her absence. And every person who came before. Every failure. Every regret. The house remembers them all, and it remembers me as well. I am cataloged, measured, judged. And it waits for me to falter again. The temperature in the hall shifted, cooling suddenly, the shadows pooling tighter, thicker. Holomir's presence pressed against them, curious and hungry. Isla looked at him, chest tight. And us. He met her gaze, expression unreadable. The house will remember this too. Every touch, every hesitation, every glance, every unspoken word between us. And it will test it, because it wants to see what it can take and how willingly it can take it. Her mind raced. Every lingering touch, every heartbeat shared in silence, every close brush of his arm recorded, observed, measured. It doesn't forget, she whispered. No, he said quietly. It never forgets. And sometimes it uses what it remembers to draw you in again. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards. The house was listening, always listening, and somewhere deep inside her, Isla understood. The house didn't just watch. It learned, it planned, it waited. And the cost of being seen was no longer abstract. It was tangible. It was theirs. And the edge of surrender was closer than ever. Chapter 13. The walls whisper. The house was awake. Isla knew at the moment she stepped into the hallway. Shadows moved independently, curling and uncurling as if breathing. The faint hum beneath the floorboards pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Every surface, every reflection, every flicker of candlelight seemed alive, watching, anticipating, judging. Lucien was ahead, silent, his presence a tether and a warning. His shoulders were tense, jaw tight, eyes scanning the darkness like he expected the walls themselves to lunge. "They know," he whispered without turning. "Who?" Isla asked, though the answer pressed against her skin like a weight she could already feel. "The house," he said simply. "All of it. Every corner, every shadow, every surface it listens, it learns, and now it whispers." She felt it then, a sound so soft it could have been imagined, curling around her thoughts like smoke. You cannot hide. You cannot resist. Isla Sibereth. Every instinct screamed to flee, but her feet refused to obey. The pull was too strong. The house was patient, intimate, deliberate, testing her limits. Lucien stepped closer, placing a steadying hand near her elbow, not touching, yet close enough that heat radiated between them. "Stay with me," he said. "Don't let it isolate you." The walls seemed to lean inward. A soft, sibilant whisper brushed against her mind. "Closer. Let go. Surrender." Her breath caught. Every nerve was alive, every muscle taut. Fear, desire, and curiosity mingled into a single, dizzying force. The house didn't just watch, they felt observed, cataloged, measured. And it wasn't satisfied with their restraint. Lucien's eyes met hers, dark and intense. "You can fight it," he said quietly, "but only if you choose, and only if you trust yourself." The whisper twisted into words that felt impossibly close, intimate, invasive. "He cannot protect you. Only I can know." Isla's skin prickled. She realized how easily Hollowmere could manipulate them, how quickly the line between fear, desire, and survival blurred here. The candlelight flickered violently, casting elongated shadows across the walls. One of the mirrors along the hall rippled briefly, showing not her reflection, but a memory, herself, younger, naive, alone, and Lucien, older, haunted, carrying the weight of everyone the house had claimed. She gasped. "You see it too," she whispered. Lucien's hand brushed hers, not holding, just tracing, just enough to anchor her. "It remembers me," he said, "and it remembers us. Every choice, every glance, every hesitation, every moment between us. And it whispers to remind us we're never alone." A low hum vibrated through the hallway, like the pulse of some immense, sentient being. Shadows coiled along the floorboards, flickering across walls, over the ceiling. Hollowmere was aware. Intentional. Alive. Isla's chest tightened. She felt the weight of all that had been said, all that had been done, all that had been bargained. She understood now the terrible intimacy of the house. It didn't just punish. It learned. It tested. It claimed attention, trust, desire, all in quiet increments, until the line between fear and longing was impossible to discern. The whisper returned, almost tender. "You belong to me." And yet, Lucien's lips brushed her hairline. Not a kiss, not fully, but close enough to make her knees weaken. "We belong to each other," he said hoarsely. "If we survive this night." The walls groaned softly, shadows stretching as if leaning in, curious. Hollowmere approved, yet threatened. It hummed through the floorboards, swirling around them, wrapping them in its awareness. Isla closed her eyes. Every rule she had learned, every bargain she had struck, every fear she had resisted, it all condensed into this moment. She felt the pulse of the house, the heat of Lucian, the pull of herself. And she chose, not surrender, not defiance, but awareness, presence, the acknowledgement of fear, desire, and love tangled into one fragile, thrilling thread. The house exhaled, a soft, satisfied creak that reverberated through the floorboards, walls, and ceiling. It had witnessed their choice. It had measured. It had remembered. And it waited, always patiently, hungrily, for the next moment. Lucian finally took her hand gently, deliberately, without hesitation. She intertwined her fingers with his, and for the first time, the house leaned back. Shadows still watched. Walls still whispered. But for now, they had survived the edge. And Hollowmere remembered everything. Not just the bargains. Not just the fear. Not just the desire. But the truth. That in this house of whispers and shadows, love and danger could coexist. That in the presence of darkness, they had chosen each other. And for now, that was enough.